Couple of weeks ago I did a video on the potential Dark Age of CRPGs coming again. What I meant by again is that in my memory, which is terrible by the way, years around and after 2008 until 2014 were quite bad for the genre, as there were almost no major and top-notch CRPGs released. There were RPGs and good ones like Fallout New Vegas and Demon's Souls, accompanied by many JRPGs dominating in terms of quantity, but when it comes to CRPGs, period between 2008 and 2014 is stuck in my memory as quite weak, and I'm afraid we are entering those years again. So I wanted to revisit that Dark Age period to see if I'm remembering it right, cause I might be wrong as heck, can't trust my memory. Just remember that I am talking about CRPGs, not the general RPG genre. CRPGs are usually classified as Western-style classic or computer-based role-playing games, where we control a party through isometric perspective with tactical, either turn-based or real-time with pause combat system, where we create our own character and shape the world through meaningful story-driven experience that offers wide variety of choices on how to finish uniquely crafted quests. Note that I combed through a couple lists and tried to find as many notable CRPGs as possible, but I surely missed smaller releases. Add in comments some of the games I've missed, also not counting re-releases and ports, only new games. In 2008, Drakensang was probably the most notable CRPG. I have played it briefly a long time ago and remember it as a solid experience but nothing amazing. Looks quite good for a 2008 game with the option to zoom in and out. Combat is good, it's not overly complex, but there are design flaws that make it very slow to play. Drakensang The Dark Age sits on Metacritic at 75 from the critics and 8 from the users. Second CRPG from 2008 that I decided to include is Avernum 5 from Spiderweb Software, a developer you'll be hearing a lot throughout this video. Jeff Vogel is a bit of a legend as he continues to create story and plot-rich games but with very unappealing visual design, which is the biggest issue for new players that want to enter the world of Jeff. No matter how you look at it, what this guy has created on his own is incredible. Avernum 5 doesn't have many reviews on Metacritic, so no average critic score, but from these few reviews it would go from 60 to 80 with average user rating of 8.8. In 2009 we had another Spiderweb game and the final one in Geneforge series called Geneforge 5 Overthrow. Basically bigger and larger Geneforge with improved visuals compared to the fourth one. Couldn't find any critic scores, but again 5 user scores averaged at 8.8. Next CRPG from 2009 is the one that saved this whole Dark Age era, and that is Dragon Age Origins. Probably every single one of you has heard of it. It is the last great BioWare game with high production value that nailed almost everything in its design. Great story, plenty of choices to make, fantastic combat, character progression. Very hard not to like original Dragon Age Origins, unlike its successors. Personally, I loved it so much that I replayed it many times. Well, it did help that no other releases of that quality happened from 2008 to 2014, so I was starving for a good CRPG. It has around 85 average critic and user score. To me it is a 9 out of 10 game from what I remember. Now we move to 2010 and its two most notable CRPG releases. Drakensang River of Time is a chronological sequel, but a prequel when it comes to the story. Another Drakensang experience that doesn't offer anything spectacular, but it can satisfy most CRPG fans with another solid entry. Not enough critic reviews with only 2 viewable on Metacritic with average of 75 and very high user rating of 8.7. Dragon Age Awakening is the second release I wanted to mention, even though it is an expansion pack for Origins. Still the best year 2010 had to offer. Not as good as the original due to some design mistakes that made it more boring due to bloated content from what I've read. Can't recall if I've played it at all, which says a lot. ...2011 was the year of Spiderweb Software. Avernum was rebooted with Escape from the Pit and First Abaddon was released. Both games have similar styles and have received very good reception, with critics giving them both between 70 and 80 with favorable user score between 7.5 and 8.5. Jeff can really write well, it seems, because in almost every game of his, story, world and writing in general is fantastic. Only downsides I could read about his games are visuals and balancing issues. Balancing is an issue, however, in almost every CRPG, but as long as it doesn't ruin the experience, it's fine. Then we have the abomination, as I remember it, called Dragon Age 2. Played about 3 hours and uninstalled it and never tried it again. Mind you, it isn't bad, but after Dragon Age Origins it is nothing but disappointment. Enjoyable for a few moments before uninspired writing, weak content and many other flaws start creeping in. From what I've read, Dragon Age 2 was heavily influenced by EA in terms of release date and BioWare was under a lot of pressure, so I guess it makes sense. Fuck EA. I really hope they disappear sooner rather than later. Dragon Age 2 sits on around 75 to 80 critic score depending on the platform and user score at 4.7, which is by far the lowest so far on the list. There is also an abomination called Dungeons & Dragons Daggerdale that has a bit higher user score than Dragon Age 2 sitting at 5, but a much lower critics score at 46. Didn't know if it was okay to include it as it looks more like an action RPG, but it has the Dungeons & Dragons name in the title and I know nothing about the game, so there you go. In 2012 we have a big one, but only name-wise. It is Game of Thrones. Game I wanted to like so much and I really tried playing it many times, but gave up eventually in each of those tries. Maybe not a CRPG, but it does have similarities, like real-time combat, but with slowing down time instead of pause. Unfortunately, everything, even combat, in this game is mediocre. Writing is nowhere near the quality of Game of Thrones, but still better than the last 2 seasons. Combat is mediocre to decent, and story choices do not seem to matter as much. Interesting thing is that on Metacritic, critics and users have the exact same score for PC version, which is 52 and 5.2. Another CRPG from 2012 is Driftmoon, a charming little indie RPG that could appeal to CRPG audience but is more on a basic side in terms of challenge and character progression. However, it does tell a good story and is a far more accessible RPG that even kids could play without being overwhelmed by overly complex mechanics. Unfortunately, it is very short with some generic designs. Sits at critics score of 73 and user score of 7.4. 2013 started a bit of change, with the second best game in this Dark Age called Shadowrun Returns. It was a very exciting time for CRPG fans, with Shadowrun releasing and Wasteland and Pillars of Eternity being announced for some time, with release dates being closer and closer. Shadowrun Returns is a great game with fantastic story, characters, good character progression, good turn-based combat and amazing art style. I loved this game back in the day and really enjoyed it a lot even without playing older Shadowrun games. It sits at 76 critic score and 7.4 user score. Scores are close to realistic as it was a short and quite linear experience, but I didn't mind either. To me it was at the time when I was playing an 8 out of 10 game. Sequel to Abaddon released, as there couldn't be a few years without Spiderweb Software games in the mix, which is a good thing. Abaddon 2 has a favorable critic score of 80 and user score of 7.7. Again, most notable downsides being visual presentation, user interface and balance, offset with good writing. Arclash Legacy is the last game. Played it and liked it. Not a world beater, but an enjoyable experience nonetheless. Combat focused RPG with great tactical approach and heavy emphasis on team dynamics and team play. Not much in terms of exploration and story, which makes it a bit repetitive, but overall a good game that sits on critic score of 72 and user score of 7.7. Upon examining this list thoroughly, I can definitely say that my memory served me well in this case. It truly was a bad period for CRPGs. Dragon Age Origins is the only game that we can say is in the range of amazing, while most games couldn't even be called great. Mostly average to good. Thankfully, after this Dark Age came Golden Age of CRPGs with the likes of Divinity Original Sin, Wasteland, Pillars, Tyranny, Pathfinder, Shadowrun sequels. I'm really hoping that the new Dark Age isn't coming, but evidence suggests it is. I'm sure there's gonna be a couple CRPGs here and there ranging from average to good, but in the next few years, if we see anything in the range of great to masterpiece, it is going to be a surprise. Fingers crossed then. That would be all. Thanks for watching.